Hey guys, welcome to Project 3. Um, I think you should be excited because this is going to be a good project, I think. Pretty interesting, hopefully. And we're finally past the scientific method in learning about um, real science, real biology. So we're going to be learning about cells in this project. But as you can see, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be protecting the United States from an unknown deadly infection. So let's get into it. So the scenario is you graduated from Wilder High School. You did great. You played some sports maybe, you joined some clubs, you had a great time, had lots of great friends. And afterwards, you decided to join the U.S. military. So here's a bunch of lovely ladies and gentlemen in the U.S. military. You had a good time doing being in the military and stuff, but your love for science was so great that you decided to go back to school and attend a university called Johns Hopkins. Johns Hopkins is a really, really good university. It's over on the East Coast in Maryland, and they have a really good science program. And you eventually graduate and get a PhD in immunology, which is basically the study of um, how to make vaccines and to save people from diseases and stuff like that. So, because you love the military, you go back and work for the military uh, as a researcher. And up to this point in your life has been pretty normal. Things are going great. You're doing research in your lab. You like your job. You go back at home and hang out with your family. It's pretty good. And then one day, you walk in to your lab, and all of a sudden, you hear a super loud alarm, and there's lights flashing, and everyone's really nervous. They're looking around. They're like, "We don't know what's going on." Um, you are uh, kind of surprised. You're not sure what the problem is, and then the door slams open, and in walks this lady. This is General Nina Armano. She is a general with the Air Force. She walks up to you and she says, "Okay, soldier, we have a mission for you. The mission is that there is an unknown disease infecting people in northern Washington and Idaho, in this red region right here. Um, and people are getting sick, and a couple people have even died, and it's spreading really quickly. And and they're really nervous at the army that the situation is going to get out of hand, that maybe people will die, or lots of people will die. Excuse me, because some people already have." Um, she tells you to walk down the hall with her, and as you're walking, you think about what you know about diseases, and you think, okay, I know that usually diseases are caused by cells invading a human body, foreign cells. So they might be cells that are sort of like animal cells, or cells that are sort of like plant cells, or cells that are like bacteria cells. So you're thinking about what the cells might look like as you're walking down the hallway. And General Armano says, "Okay, your job is to find a cure for this disease. Um, you have to figure out how to fight this disease and save all these people in Idaho and Washington that are getting sick." She says that eventually you're going to make a presentation to a whole panel of generals, and you have to try to convince them that your solution to fighting the disease is the best. It's going to be You're going to have to go through a lot of things. You're going to have to give them the history of the cell, um, kind of some of the basics of the building blocks of cells, and all this in a presentation. All the details are in your directions over here. So you'll have to make a presentation that has a brief history of the cell, some of the people who helped discover cell theory, an explanation of what cell theory is, an explanation of the function of each of the building blocks of cells, the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Um, and this is all just because the generals don't really understand kind of some of the background of what cells are. Then you're going to have to create a model of three different types of cells. One animal cell, one plant cell, and one bacteria cell. Okay. Each of these cells looks a little bit different, and they each have different organelles, which are like little tiny organs, little tiny things that do things inside the cell. So each one of these cells has different organelles, You have to make a model of each one of them, and then explain in 2 to 3 sentences per organelle what each of these organelles do in the cells, okay? And then the most important part, General Armagno tells you, is to make an argument of which organelle in each type of cell is the most important to disable to stop the disease, and why, and then an argument of what would happen when this organelle is disabled and why. Because the whole point, what you're trying to convince these generals, you want to say, hey, I want to make a vaccine or a drug that attacks this specific part of the cell, and I think that's the most important part of the cell to kill. So General Armagno here knows that the task is difficult, but she knows that you're up to the challenge. So she wishes you good luck. Now, something to remember is that your representations of a cell have to be made by you, and they can be anything. They can be a Jell-O cell. They could be a cell that's baked out of a cake, a cell that's crocheted with your grandma, a cell that you sewed into a shirt, a cell that you drew on a poster, a cell that you made on your computer, an animation of a 3D cell, anything you can think of, the way you want to do it. I encourage you to be as creative as possible when you're making your cell. Just make sure it's accurate to what a cell looks like, and that you explain in 2 to 3 sentences per organelle what each of these organelles do, so that I know that you understand what they do. And then you also, of course, have to, in the presentation section, do all these things. You can explain sort of the history and the context of the cell to the generals. Okay, let me see what else we got here. So yeah, just make sure you and then, of course, we'll have the rubric online for you. You can see exactly how I'm going to grade it. It's a pretty long rubric because it's a pretty long project, but I think it's going to be a fun project. So remember, in order to pass the project, you have to have all 3 cells. So make sure they're all there. And then at the end, in your classcraft section, right here, where I explain, you have to submit a survey before you you have to finish a survey before you can submit your project. And this survey is to help you self-grade to make sure that you are ready to, here's the self-grading form, make sure that the project is ready to turn in. Okay, I think that should explain it mostly. So we're helping to save the United States from an unknown disease that's infecting people in Idaho and Washington, and you have to make a cell and convince some generals which part of the cell you're trying to attack, which part that would work the best. So good luck, and I am excited to see all your interesting projects that you're going to make.